How's it going, everybody? My name is Derek, and today I am going to be doing a video talking about my experience with long COVID and just kind of going into detail on what I've gone through the last 2.5 years and how it has definitely changed my life, and not in a good way. And this is something I've been wanting to do for a while, but I just never really could bring myself to do it. I could never really, I don't know, find the courage to just kind of sit here and talk about it. And there's a lot of people out there that are struggling with long COVID, and there's too many mysteries with it, and hardly any answers on what helps. There's a lot of theories out there, but there's nothing really concrete or proven. But there definitely is a lot of research on it, and hopefully one day we'll get to a point where there is something definitive that can actually help people recover. The hard thing is that long COVID affects people very differently, and it affects a lot of really big things in the body, mentally, with your nervous system, a lot. And everybody experiences a lot of similar symptoms, but obviously very different symptoms all at the same time. So with that said, if you watch this video, it's probably gonna be a couple, because I'm gonna kind of explain in quite a bit of detail on just my experiences. And the purpose of that is really to just let people see that, they're not alone. There's people dealing with this stuff, and, maybe anyone who watches this can kind of relate and, just hear another story that maybe even validates some of the things that they're going through, because that's another hard thing that some of us deal with, is people like validating us, including doctors, right? Including healthcare professionals that just don't understand it, or don't want to take the time or patience to look deeper into it, and just shy people away and say, oh, you just have anxiety, or you just whatever, which I'm sure a lot of people out there have experienced. So with that being said, I appreciate anybody who watches this to listen, and hopefully it helps any of you just, again, relate. And so the first part of this first video, I'm really just going to talk about kind of introduce myself a little bit, kind of who I am, and then kind of go into the first year of stuff that I dealt with and how this all started. So first of all, again, my name is Derek. I'm currently 30 years old, and I'm a pretty normal person, just like everybody else out there. And, one thing when it comes to COVID and long COVID is, for me, I have always been a pretty healthy person, moderate, I've been normally healthy. I've never really had to go to the doctor or the hospital for anything. I've never really had any major health issues up until COVID. I wasn't somebody who was incredibly healthy. I'm not like this crazy fit person who goes to the gym every day and eats super good all the time, and does everything that they can to just be as healthy and fit as possible. That's not me. But I definitely was not somebody who was generally unhealthy. My job, I work at a dealership, so there's a lot of days where I'm walking around a lot, walking the lot and showing cars and doing this and that. And that definitely is a lot. Sometimes you get a good amount of steps in most days. And, I've been working this job for almost 9 years now. So, I've just been kind of used to it. A few years of that, I was in the finance office. And that was actually kind of when the peak of my long COVID started. So we'll get into that when we get to that, because that definitely, there's a lot of stuff that happened at that time. But like most people, I've just been someone who generally didn't have any underlying issues that I was aware of, and never really had any problems. Immune system wise, I always had a pretty good immune system. I was someone who very rarely got sick, and when I did get sick, it usually wasn't super bad. I could only count maybe 1 or 2 times in my life that I was just really not feeling good. I never really had any major allergies to things, to foods or anything like that. I kind of ate whatever I want, drank whatever I want. I do not drink, I do not smoke. That is important to note. I'm not a smoker. I've never done vapes or anything like that. So for the most part, my lungs have been rather healthy. Again, diet wise, I've been pretty bad with my diet over the years. Pretty big soda drinker through the years. So I know that's definitely not good. I do not as much anymore sometimes. And I know I probably shouldn't do this now, but it's because it's just kind of a bad habit. But I used to be pretty big on energy drinks, drinking them like every single day. Not anything super over the top, but you know, I liked energy drinks at a time. You know, sometime in the current times, I will have some of an energy drink. Again, usually I try now to find really light ones or stuff that's not super covered in sugar and you know, doesn't have a super high caffeine content. And most of the time I'll only make it a quarter, maybe halfway through the can before I'm like freaking out. But it's just a bad habit I still have yet to break. But I try not to have as much caffeine in general anymore, even though it is still tough. But anyways, yeah, so again, overall, I'm just a pretty, I've been a pretty healthy, normal person. Also to note, I never got the COVID shot or the jab. I'm not somebody who has ever really gotten vaccines. I never even had a flu shot in my life. And it has nothing to do with being against them. I don't know. I just never got them. I never felt like I needed to get them. I usually was always pretty lucky. I knew people in my life, you know, family members and even friends that would get the flu shot pretty routinely. And like clockwork, every year they would also get the flu, get sick. So that's that. You know, I'm married. I have 2 wonderful boys. And one's 8, one's 1. And that dynamic is awesome. It's so fun, you know, seeing them just interact together and growing up. And, you know, it's been really awesome having them around. And that's also part of the struggle now, is with the current state of things. You know, I do feel like it's harder to show up a lot of days with them because, again, the long COVID, just fog and mental strain that it takes on you. It is tough. And again, if you're experiencing long COVID in any capacity, you know exactly what I am talking about. So to kind of get going into all this, now that I've kind of introduced myself a little bit, I'm going to kind of explain just what I went through in the beginning part of having COVID and kind of how that led to everything else. So the very first time I had COVID was actually 2020, December 2020. And when I first got it, it was pretty minor. It was, you know, I lost my taste, I lost my smell. That was how I kind of figured out that I had COVID, because I showed up to work one day and I had my breakfast with me and I couldn't taste or smell like anything. It was really weird. And I didn't even feel that bad. I just kind of like went to work like a normal day and it was just kind of there. And so I went and got, you know, I left, went and got a COVID test. I had to go to like an urgent care to get the COVID test, and came up positive, of course. And that was at the time where like it was kind of peak, like, you know, it'd been a year. It was still 2020, but you know, there was obviously still a ton of anxiety about it, and media was still, you know, just talking about all the negative things that were going on with it in the world. And this was at a time where we were obviously still mandating masks and keeping the distance and, you know, going through the works. So I quarantined myself in my basement because that's what we thought we were supposed to do at that time. And yeah, it wasn't that bad for me. Like I said, I had a fever after that for maybe like a couple days, and then I kind of experienced the lung and tightness and stuff, but not anything like super over the top. I basically recovered from that COVID bout like pretty easily. It didn't really affect me super bad. And I recovered from it. My taste and my smell was only gone for maybe like a month, and then it came back. So pretty like not a too bad experience. My poor wife, on the other hand, she got sick like literally right after I got better, and she got it so bad. I felt so sorry for her. She was in bed for like 2 or 3 days with a fever, just miserable. And yeah, she got it definitely way worse than I did. So that was the first time. Now, skipping through to 2021, I didn't have anything happen in 2021. 2021 was my last, like, well, technically 22 is my last like regular year, but like 2021 was fine. I didn't experience anything else. I'm pretty certain I never even caught COVID again in 2021, and that was that. And also, I don't recall ever experiencing anything really weird, like, you know, long COVID aspect after that first bout of COVID. My smell and taste came back pretty normally, and I just didn't really have anything else weird going on. So now we're going to skip all the way to 2022. And this is where everything just kind of starts getting rough. So in 2022, I got COVID again in September of 2022. And this time, it was extremely different compared to the first time. I woke up one day with a fever. It wasn't like super high, but it was over 100, and just felt terrible. I was actually supposed to go to a wedding that weekend for a buddy, and I had to text him and say, hey, like, I woke up really sick and I'm sorry, like, I'm not gonna be there. And it was a super huge bummer. And I had that fever for like maybe 2 days. Now let me see. Sunday, yeah, it's like Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday is when I pretty much had the fevers and just wasn't feeling super good. I think I had gone to work that Monday, just kind of fighting through it, but I definitely didn't feel great. Was off that Tuesday, and then that Wednesday, this is where everything changed. So that Wednesday, I get up, I go to work, and this was also at the time that I worked in the finance department at the dealership. So I had my own office, and I didn't really have to worry about walking out on the car lot and going and getting customers and things like that. I went to my office, did my job, right? So I wake up that day, I don't have a fever. I am taking a medication. I'd been taking a medication the last couple days that I don't normally take. It was just like a severe flu symptom. I don't know if I can really say the name on video of what it is, but it was like an Alka-Seltzer type thing. And while I don't think that had anything to do with what happened this day, sometimes my mind goes back to that, and I just kind of wonder, like, did my body have a reaction to that, or whatever. But I don't think that was the case. I think it was just purely COVID. Now at the time, on this day, I didn't know I had COVID. I thought I just kind of had like maybe the flu or a cold. I didn't even take a COVID test. This was at this point the 4th day I had been sick, but I didn't have a fever. So I just got up, I go to work, I take the medication. I'm feeling fine for the most part, right? So I'm sitting at my desk, and I'm loading up a deal for a customer, and all of a sudden, and I don't really know how much more I can explain what I'm about to explain, but all of a sudden I get this like wave of like electricity, or kind of just like this tingle. I don't really know how to explain what it was, but it's pretty powerful to say the least. Start from the bottom of my legs and go through my body like a wave all the way up to my head and into my tongue. And on top of that, in that exact moment, I physically like felt my mind shift. And to be honest, I thought I was gonna faint. I've never actually fainted in my life before. But, I have had moments in my life where you get up too fast or whatever, and your head kind of gets lightheaded and tunnel vision for a second, and you're just kind of like, whoa, And it wasn't like that, which was what was weird about it. But it felt like I was going to faint. And when it hit me, it literally came out of nowhere. And I felt my entire body, physically and mentally, just shift over. And this wave of whatever went through my body, and I kind of stood back for a second, and I was like, whoa, I feel like I'm gonna faint. And I immediately got this like spike of anxiety, and I just kind of like stood up for a second. I started down in a bunch of water, but it like nothing helped in the moment. Like, I felt so weird. And I basically walked outside to go get some air to just try and like, calm down for a second, get some oxygen, and that didn't even help. I was like standing outside trying to breathe and drink some water, and I felt like I was still just gonna faint. And then on top of that, I still had every like 10 minutes or so, maybe even 5 minutes at that point, because in the moment, time just kind of like stood still, so to speak, and I just would keep feeling periodically that wave go through my body, and it would happen the same way every single time. It would start from the bottom, and that tingle would just go all the way through my body, all the way up to my head and to my tongue. But it was so uncomfortable. It wasn't like a chill that you feel when you catch a breeze, or when you get a little anxious, or I don't know how to explain what it was. And what I can tell you is that I've never felt anything like that before in my life. And since then, I've never even felt it again. So whatever it was made me feel terrible. So I call my wife and I said, hey, and my wife knows that, at least at the time, like, I never really complained much about not feeling good. I never really like went to the hospital for anything. Like she knew that something wasn't right, because when I called her, I said, hey, look, this is what's going on. I feel way wrong, and I want you to take me to the hospital. I don't even think I could drive right now. So she's like, okay, I'll be right there. So she comes, she's on her way to pick me up. I'm letting my managers know what's going on. And as I'm like walking past people, I had like multiple people look at me and be like, whoa, are you okay? Like, you look pale and you do not look good. And I'm like, yeah, I don't feel good right now, like at all. Like, I feel awful. So anyways, after that whole thing, and that's important because like in that moment, I sometimes go back to that moment and I think to myself, like, did I physically feel something in my body like change? You know, like, I know that sounds insane to think, but sometimes I think that because the way that tingle felt and the fact that it lasted for most of the day periodically and really only that day, it was one of the most weird just sensations and most confusing things that I've gone through. And so sometimes I do go back to that and I think like, man, I wonder if I like felt my body shift or something. I don't know. And maybe not. Maybe that's just reaching, but it was just so obscure, and I don't know if anyone else has felt something like that before, but it was weird. So anyways, I get to the hospital. As we're going to the hospital, I still am getting that just weird feeling, and I'm definitely still feeling kind of lightheaded and just not great. So I get to the hospital, I let them know what's going on. They get me back there relatively quickly, and you know, the first things that they do is they stick you and get some blood for blood work, and they ran an EKG on me. The EKG came up fine. There was nothing that looked abnormal with the EKG. I was obviously a little tachycardic, but it didn't show anything. And I just kind of explained what happened, and you know, that I hadn't been feeling good for a couple days, figured it was just some kind of flu or cold, no big deal. And then just whatever I was feeling, I don't know. And now we're here. So the doctor didn't really seem like super concerned. You know, they brought my blood work back and they said, well, you know, most everything seems fine, except your white blood cell count is down a little bit, your potassium's down a little bit, and you're dehydrated. But other than that, you know, you just seem like you're still sick with whatever this virus is, and you know, you should just go rest. So I said, okay. You know, they gave me some medicine. They didn't actually test me for anything. They didn't do a viral swab. They didn't do anything like that. They basically just probably looked at me like I was somebody who just wasn't feeling good and showed up to the hospital, and you know, they gave me some light medication and sent me on my way, right? They didn't look at me as a major thing. So I go home, I basically rest the rest of the day, and now we go to the next day. Now the next day I go to work, and I'm actually feeling not bad again, kind of the same as the day before. I didn't take any other medication, but I felt like fine. I didn't have a fever. I got some rest, you know, was what it was. And while I was there, a coworker of mine, he was like, hey, you know, how you doing, whatever. And I was like, I'm all right, you know, whatever. And he's just like, you know, did they give you a COVID test? And I was like, no, actually they didn't. And he had an extra one, so he's like, well, here, you know, take this test and, you know, just see. And sure enough, it popped up positive immediately. And so I was like, okay, that makes sense why this entire week I have felt almost worse than I ever have before, because it's COVID. Totally makes sense. And I don't know what strain this is. Whatever it was, it's just, or I don't know, when it was the Delta or the, what was it called? The Omicron or whatever it was. I don't know which one this technically was. It was 2022. So whatever was kind of like the big thing at that time. But I definitely know this was like the worst I'd ever felt in my life. And, you know, again, I let my managers know, like, okay, well, I got COVID. What do you want me to do? And they're like, well, it's your choice. You know, you can take a couple days, whatever. So I did. So I go rest at home. And those days after that, even though I was kind of getting to like, you know, day 6, 7, 8, 9, you know, I was sick for like 10 days. And that bottom half was really like just miserable. It just felt like a flu with a cold, and like I didn't really get a fever again, but I just felt awful. So that was basically that COVID experience. Again, maybe not too bad from the perspective of like I wasn't necessarily in the hospital with all these problems, but like for me, it was not, you know, probably the sickest I had ever been at that point in my life. So skip forward to the week after. Now we're in like the very end of September, and or no, I'm sorry, we're like in the second week of September. I get back to work and I'm feeling fine. I'm actually feeling pretty good. And this is again where everything kind of starts to shift. I felt good for about 2 weeks. And that's important because there are a lot of people, I follow different, you know, COVID groups on Facebook and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people that talk about their experiences. And one of the things that I've seen commonly is that people have COVID, and then 2 weeks after they have COVID, or 2 weeks after they recover from having COVID, is when all the long COVID symptoms start. It's not the case for everybody, but I have seen that with some people. And that's literally what happened with me, is 2 weeks in, I was fine. And I woke up one morning and everything, just, my world was different. Everything changed. The first things that started were my stomach was absolutely torn pieces. My stomach was just, I woke up one morning, the morning that everything started, and it was just, I don't know, not good. I'm not gonna go into detail, but my stomach was just not having a good day. And it was just pretty obscure for me. Like, I don't know. I can't say I've always had stomach problems. I kind of have always had this idea that maybe I've had some form of IBS or something over the years, but I never really looked too far into it. And, you know, even for me, you know, that particular day, it just wasn't super normal for me. So there's that. I had no appetite. I could drink water and I could drink liquids like, you know, Gatorades and things like that, electrolytes, whatever I could just kind of find. But I did not want to eat. I barely like could get a banana down. I think I tried eating maybe an apple. Those were kind of like my staples for a while. And I felt this really weird, like off balance feeling in my head. It wasn't necessarily like a dizziness or vertigo. It was just kind of like this sensation. It's like if you went on like a roller coaster, or maybe you were on like a boat, and you know, you're kind of like doing this, moving around, your equilibrium's kind of getting thrown off a little bit, and then you get back onto land, and your like body's kind of trying to reconfigure itself after getting thrown all over the place, right? That's kind of like how it was. It was super minor. It wasn't to the point that it made me feel nauseous, but it was like there. Like I could feel it, that it was there. And it was just this really weird sensation where I felt like I was just gonna like topple over, or like I kind of could lose my balance or something. It was really weird. I also had tremors. My hands had tremors in them. My left side worse than others. My legs were also like shaky, and it was really weird. And then I could also just tell that my heart would like kind of beat a little bit faster than normal. And I started to notice that a little bit more as the days went on, that my heart rate was just kind of higher than normal for no reason. And I could like feel it, which I guess maybe would have just been from like a raised heart rate, maybe palpitations, I don't know. But literally all of this hit me at once. I just woke up one day and it was all there. And I just thought, man, like, did I just not sleep good? Maybe I have like food poisoning or something from what I ate the day before. Maybe I got sick again. Like, I don't really know. So I go to work that day. I get through the day. I didn't really eat anything all day long. And basically what I just explained to you was what I did for about 2 weeks. And I just kind of thought that, you know, this would go away on its own. I just kind of thought, okay, maybe it's, again, food poisoning, or I'm just tired, or I'm just sick again, or whatever. And after a couple days, it would just kind of go away. This stuff never went away. Even to this very moment that I'm recording this video, this stuff never went away. But back then, when I just didn't really know what the heck was going on, it just never went away. So I would wake up every day, not hungry. Well, like I was hungry, but I just could not bring myself to eat at all. Basically I just drank water. I also like stopped drinking the energy drinks and drinking caffeine and soda, because the way I was feeling, I was kind of in my mind thinking like, it's probably gonna make me feel worse. I can't, like, if I'm not eating, I can't be having stuff like that. And that may have contributed a little bit through some of the stuff over the course of the next weeks, is probably a little bit of caffeine withdrawal. But like even after that subsided, all the other stuff still stuck around. But yeah, I had daily tremors. I had daily my heart rate would just go up for no reason. And that was one of the things I noticed where like something wasn't really right. I'd be going to work and my heart rate would just, I'd be driving to work and my heart rate would just be like, 90 to 100. sometimes a little bit over 100 for no reason at all. And I had a few moments where my heart rate, I'd get these like, I guess now I understand it as like an adrenaline dump, or, you know, maybe what do they call that now? Like a spike protein storm or cytokine storm or something like that I've read up on. I don't know, but whatever it was, it basically just felt like my body would get pumped with adrenaline out of the blue for no reason, and it felt terrible. Like I'd be sitting at my desk doing nothing, and all of a sudden my heart rate would just jump up to like 120, 130. I'd get all shaky, and it's almost like I had like an anxiety or a panic attack, but like for no reason, out of the blue. It would just happen. And it would last for like maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes. And then my body would kind of like calm down from it. But then the problem is after it went through all that adrenaline, I'd be so tired. It would like wear me out so much for the rest of the day. So that I dealt with that for like 2 weeks. And finally I got to a point where I was like, well, okay, so first I went back to the hospital after a couple days of even feeling like this. It was like 2 or 3 days in a row where I was feeling like this, and my heart rate just kept being up for no reason. And I told my wife, I'm like, this just doesn't feel normal. Like, I don't think my heart rate should be up like this. So I went to the hospital, and they did the same stuff. The EKG, blood work, whatever. And the only reason why I went to the hospital is just because at the time, I didn't really have a doctor to go to, because I never got a doctor. This is actually before I got a doctor. And I didn't want to go to an urgent care because I didn't think it'd be worthwhile. And I just said, okay, I'm just going to go to the hospital real quick because I just don't know. And they all said the same thing. They're like, after all the tests, they're like, you have some tachycardia. There's no real indication why, but everything looks normal. All my labs were normal. Everything was fine. So I just said, all right, well, I don't know what's going on then. So after that, that was when the rest of like the 2-week period happened, where I just continued to feel like this. And it was like stressing me out. I got to a point where like midway through the second week of feeling like this, I was like crying in front of my wife. I was like so stressed out, so anxious, because this feeling of like feeling so miserable every day in my head, just feeling fuzzy in my body, feeling the way it felt, it just wasn't going away. Nothing could go away. And it was weird and it still is kind of like this today, where like I would wake up, and being awake in the morning up till the afternoon was like where it was the worst. And then as the day would go on up until the evening, my body would kind of come down from it. And there were even some days where I was able to eat at nighttime, and I felt actually kind of normal at nighttime. And so I'd be like, oh, like maybe I'm kind of snapping out of it. And then I'd go to bed and I'd wake up and it would just repeat. It made no sense. It's like my body would reset while I was asleep, but not in a good way. So I decide to finally go see a doctor. I said, I need to just go see a doctor at this point. And this was in the beginning of October. So I go see my doctor, or the doctor that I found that was kind of recommended to me. And I tell him what's going on. I said, look, I had COVID. And ever since I had COVID, this is what I've been dealing with. And I tell him all the symptoms that I had. And he says, well, now keep in mind, this was in 2022, where like long COVID was, it like wasn't super recognized, right? Like there were some stuff about it, but definitely not as much as there is now. It was kind of something that was not like looked at, or I don't know. Nobody really like knew what long COVID was at this point. At least there wasn't too much information about it. So anywho, I go to this doctor, I tell him what's going on, and he says, all right, well, you're not the first person that I have helped or heard that are having at least heart issues after COVID. I have helped people, or at least, have people come in here before that have told me that. So I'm thinking, okay, so really what he starts doing is he starts kind of like breaking down other things that it could be, right? So he starts asking me stuff about me and, different things like that. And we start talking about like acid reflux and all this other stuff. And he's just like, well, let's try this basically. So he put me on omeprazole for like 2 weeks, which is an acid reducer that helps people with like GERD, and it's like a pretty intense acid reducer. So I'm like, all right, I'll try it at this point, whatever. I didn't do blood work that day, just mostly because I was kind of freaked out about it. I'd never really gotten blood drawn before, so I was just, at least outside of the last couple hospital visits. So I was like, all right, well, we'll try this, whatever. Here's what's crazy. When I was on that omeprazole for 2 weeks, I actually started to feel better. And I don't know if it was a placebo or if it had something to do with the omeprazole itself, but I'm not going to lie. I actually felt somewhat better over the course of those 2 weeks. And I was able to eat again. I didn't really have a lot of the dizziness. I still had some things that were kind of weird, like the tremors and the leg shakiness, but I mean, it definitely wasn't as bad. Another thing that I noticed kind of in the middle of all this, by the way, is that I've been wearing glasses since I was like 7 years old. I've worn contacts a lot through my life too. But basically, I noticed that my vision in my left eye was kind of like off for whatever reason. Like I could just tell that it was a little bit more fuzzy in my glasses and in my contacts. I'm like, my left eye just doesn't seem like it's like focusing right. But I'll get to that in just a second. So anywho, I take this omeprazole. I'm good for like 2 weeks. And when I'm done with the omeprazole, guess what happens? Everything starts relapsing. I start to notice that I am feeling everything over again with some new symptoms at that. One of the symptoms that kind of popped up that was newer was my eyes were becoming really sensitive to light. So when I would go inside a store or even at my job, I mean, I'm sitting in an office working under these LED lights all day, like lights would bother me. And my eyes were so sensitive, like to the point where I would go to work and I would turn my light off throughout the day if I didn't have a customer. I would just turn it off and I'd sit in my office with the lights off because it literally bothered me so bad. And going to the stores, to Walmart or whatever, any store that I went to, the grocery store, like the lights bothered me in those stores. It was really, really weird. So that was another symptom that popped up. So with my eyes, so first I go back to the doctor and I tell him, hey, it was working. I don't know if it was actually the omeprazole or what, but here we are. And I'm now feeling all the same stuff again. So this time he does a stool test on me, and he does, just to check for bacteria, and he does a blood panel on me. And the stool test came back that, so I do have pets, I have cats, I have dogs. And he's like, the only thing was like, there's this one particular very common bacteria that was kind of elevated, but if you have pets, this could be a reason why it's elevated. So he didn't really seem concerned. And then the other thing was, just my sugars were a little high, not too crazy high, but they were a little high. And he's like, well, if you were nervous or you ate something before you came to do this, that's probably going to spike it. And I said that was the case, both of them really. And he's like, okay, well, I'm not worried about that because your A1C, which targets like if you have diabetes and stuff, was normal, but your sugars were just a little high, so I'm not super worried about it. Okay, so blood work was fine, at least the stuff he did. Stool test was relatively fine. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know what to do because, the omeprazole kind of helped, but now it doesn't. But I know that's not really a medication you should, take for a long time. So I don't really know what to do. But I also, didn't still feel super terrible. So he just writes it off. And this was like at the end of October. The same time this is happening, I go to the eye doctor and I have him check my eyes because I told him, I'm like, I swear one of my eyes is different. And sure enough, my left eye had gotten worse by 0.25%. And my eyes have been relatively, well, I've worn glasses most of my life, through most of my 20s, like my mid 20s, my eyes finally got to a point where they stopped changing. And so they were fine for like 3 years. And now all of a sudden my left eye decided to get a little bit worse right after having COVID. So does that have something to do with it? I don't know. Is it an oxygen thing, a brain thing? I have no idea. All I can tell you is that my entire left side of my body specifically kind of got the brunt of it. Like my left hand shakes more when I have tremors. My left leg is usually the more wobbly leg when I'm walking downstairs. My left eye was the one that changed. I don't know. It makes no sense, but that's kind of what I've had happen. So that's it. So after that specific doctor appointment and I go to the eye doctor, I get to a point where I'm just like, well, I don't know what to do. Maybe this stuff will just go away on its own, because at the time, that's what some of the articles and stuff about long COVID were talking about, was maybe some of this stuff will just go away on its own, right? There's people that like, oh, I was like this for 4 months or 6 months or whatever, and then it just kind of went away. So that was kind of my hope. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna try and eat healthier. I'm gonna, stick away from sugars and sodas and energy drinks, and I'm gonna just drink water all the time. And I'm just gonna try and take it day by day. And I did that for the remainder of the year of 2022. And November and December, for the most part, were okay. I definitely didn't feel better. I didn't really feel like myself, but I felt like okay enough that I was getting through the days. I was able to go to work. I was able to do all the holiday stuff. I definitely had some moments that were a little weird, but I just kept telling myself like, hey, if I just give it more time, it's a day by day thing. It was what it was. So that is basically how the start of all of this happened. So I'm going to cut this video here. And my next video is going to be talking more about 2023 and kind of going into 2024, what I went through after the fact, because things definitely got worse as time went on, unfortunately. But it's just weird how everything kind of started, you know, the everything from the weird tingle that went through my body up to you know, the symptoms themselves, the doctor, you know, not really having an answer, you know, tried omeprazole, didn't really, kind of worked but didn't, you know, who knows. And then after that, you know, I was okay for at least a couple months. But once January of 2023 hit is when things just kept getting, unfortunately, worse. So, but I'm going to cut this video here. I'm already about 35, almost 36 minutes in. So again, if you're following along with this and have managed to listen through most of this, I appreciate it. I am going to continue the story though, because again, we have another, you know, 2.5 years to kind of go through with just what's more that's happened. So go ahead and keep watch for the second video, or we're just moving forward with anything. Thanks.